Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Happy Monday, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
So, Alison, I feel like we should welcome our newer peeps, not even newest, just our newer peeps.
Newer ones, yeah.
We were talking about before we started recording that we're noticing more people finding us on Facebook and our listen rate has gone up and all sorts of things. So welcome if you're newer to the podcast, and we're glad you've stuck with us if you are not so new. If you've stuck with us from the beginning, you've stuck with us through a lot. So
certainly have.
Oh yeah. We've actually had people kind of critique and tell us, there's a big difference between when you first started and how you banter now. And I enjoy those critiques. So, how you've improved. And I'm like, okay. So I enjoy it. It's good how, to know how it's perceived, the evolution of this podcast. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about a trait that a child might naturally exhibit, sometimes in really humorous ways, or humorous to me, maybe not to our teachers.
Not to everybody else, maybe.
but it really, some of the children who exhibit these traits are leaders. And, when we're young children, we really are most ourselves. Yeah. We are who we really are when we're young children before the world gets to us and tells us, oh no, don't behave that way.
You can't do that.
Right? Yeah. And we start to second guess what we're doing and we change our behavior. Temperament you're born with, behavior is learned. And that's sort of one of those mantras that I say all the time on this podcast because it's so true.
So true.
Some children are born with leadership qualities.
Yeah.
and that's tough when they're like 3 years old or 4 years old to be such a natural born leader that it almost can appear to people like you are just taking over, pushing back. It's really a good trait to be a leader.
Yeah, but it has so many negative connotations to it. Everybody thinks it's like a negative to be directing people, or they get labeled as something that's, and it's.
They get labeled as like bossy or they're leading.
Yeah,
they're leading.
They're leading.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that typically more girls are criticized for leading than boys still today in 2021. And that's not okay.
That is not okay at all.
Right? We need to actually foster leadership in young children. Maybe we'll raise good leaders for the future. And the thing is, we need to channel it for good. We need to give them ways to lead, but we'll get there. So let's talk about, Alison and I were talking about, the true sign of a leader. And during the shutdown of schools, I did a lot of observing classes. I saw a lot of things. You see a lot of things on Zoom with young children and their families. I could write a book just about what I've seen on Zoom. I really was entertained when I would see like really young children, 2.5, 3 years old, just unmuting themselves and throwing in any old statement or question. It was driving people crazy, but it was
it was great.
It was so awesome. And I have to tell you, there were some really great teachers who I observed who were just like, great, thanks for saying that. Can you mute now again? And I would just be like on mute laughing.
It's
some
so
of them
funny.
are so funny.
Yeah.
Or I would watch them, and I've watched this in classrooms too, watch these children just try to derail and turn the conversation somewhere else.
I have that done to me a lot because I can be a little forgetful or a little like, let's try this. And, let's just try it. And that kind of gives them a little in. So I've had kids go, Miss Allison, why don't we try it this way instead? Even though I just said we were going to do it this other way.
Allison, you should try it the other way instead.
And I usually do. I'm like, well, let's try it both ways. We'll try it this way first, and then we'll try your method and see. And you just choose which one you want better. But it happens to me on a daily basis, probably. Like, why don't we just do it this way? And most things I could be like, yeah, let's do it that way. And then there's some things that are like, yeah, no, we can't. That you have to kind of know what you can say yes and no to And if I could say yes, I'm going to say yes, because that'll foster that leadership quality.
Isn't that like one of those improv things that it's always a yes? Whatever the other partner does when you're improvising in acting, you have to just say yes to it and carry on. I feel like that with a lot of the children who are leaders. Like, it's going to really just benefit me to kind of find a way to say yes sometimes and carry on with my day after that, because they will persist. How about the kids who are leaders? You can spot them when they are playing in the dramatic play area or on the playground, like real fast.
Oh yeah. They are directing all the kids where to go, what to do, what their role is, how you're going to do it. And if the kid does it a different way, no, you should do it this way. And I just let that happen. There's some teachers that'll stop it and say, no, you need to let the kids be who they're, whatever they want to be. I feel like the kids will regulate themselves. If they don't want to be in that and they don't want to be directed, they'll get out of that real fast, or they'll say something to the kid.
Some of the children who don't want to be directed will leave. They'll walk away.
Yeah.
Some of the children will go along for a while, and then you see they're getting frustrated, and then you have to go over and help them manage that. Some of them used to come over to me when I was a teacher and be like, he keeps telling me what to do. And my answer to that was, well, what should you say to that? Let's think about what you should do when you don't like that. I think you need to tell him, I don't like that, and I want to decide what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Or let's decide together what we, how can we change this? Yeah. So, but yeah, that happens a lot. He doesn't like, he's bossing me around. He's telling me what to do. It's like, well,
he's not the boss of me.
He's not the boss. And you're right. He is not the boss of you. But
no, and I would tell the other children, you get to decide, but we have to decide how to go over and try to make that happen. And then it's a whole negotiation. But those children who are doing that, sometimes in just the most challenging and yet endearing ways.
Yeah.
And especially at home, as a parent, I can completely relate to that feeling where you suddenly realize, wait a minute, who's running this household?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yes.
Here? Who's setting these rules? Sometimes, just like we always say that we have to give children choices, choice is very important. And it's important, as we have said before, for children to have the opportunity to take reasonable risks where they won't get hurt, make mistakes. We teach them to think about what they've done and how they might do it differently and all that stuff. And, we need to give children the chance to lead. If they are leaders, what can they lead? What can they help determine? What can we put them in charge of? That child in a classroom, and you're giving out classroom responsibilities, you can give responsibilities, like individual responsibilities to children. And maybe that leader is like the supervisor of the children, pushing in the chairs and putting the crayons away.
What a great idea.
I used to have in my classroom, I used to have inspectors. And I know people who've worked for me have done this too, because I told them about it, where I had children who did certain responsibilities because they responded best to having a specific task to do. Like, just tell me to put the markers back in the thing every day and I can handle that. And that was the developmental level they were at. And there were other children who just really needed to be in charge of everything. And they started to kind of boss everybody around. And what I did was I made them inspectors. And I used to say, you are the inspector for this area and this area, and you are the inspector for the chairs, and they would wait. The other children would go and do their thing and meet their responsibilities. And then I would unleash the inspectors, and the inspectors would go and kind of correct it, or whatever. It's kind of I guess it doesn't so much change when you're an adult. It's like when, your spouse puts things in the dishwasher and you don't like the way they put them. And then you go as the inspector and move all the bowls around. It's kind of like that. And so they had those sorts of jobs. You can think about those sorts of jobs in the classroom.
Actually,
and I'll tell you what, when they are looking to lead, if you hand over large group time to them sometimes and just be like, here, what do you want to ask everybody? The children learn to ask and answer questions from each other. And actually, that's a good skill. Sometimes they can lead different times of day. And I encourage that. And I want to encourage these children to embrace who they are. As the world gets to you and says to you, no, it's not okay to be who you are. It's a real shame because talent is lost. No?
Yeah, creativity is squashed.
Yeah.
And that's just really sad. Like, and you're right. Talent gets squashed.
Talent gets squashed. And some people don't rediscover that talent for many years. What was that? There's like a saying, and I'm going to butcher it. There's like a saying or statement or something that our whole lives are a quest to go back to who we were as very young children.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you haven't heard that?
I've never heard of that, but I really like it.
That's our whole quest. As we begin to change who we are to meet the needs of society, instead of just being who we are, our quest is to go back. But you have to go like really far in order to circle back and become who you were. And when you think about people who are older, they do kind of return to who they were when they were like 3 and 4 years old. Because, one of the great things I admire about people who are older than me is that they just say what's on their mind, kind of like a 3 and 4 year old, because they don't care anymore, right? They don't care anymore. They have nobody to impress anymore. I really appreciate that about them. So they have kind of returned to that 3 or 4 year old who also says what's on their mind and really doesn't care anymore. I know that at home, it can be really, really challenging, that 24-hour-a-day parent thing. If you're on YouTube, Alison is moving. You're not going crazy. So, just focus on me. I know that can be really hard when you're parenting, when you have a child who basically is a leader. My younger son, who I speak about a lot on this podcast because Scott just is a worthy subject, I guess. Hi, Scott, if you're listening. You're a worthy subject. He is, by the way, a terrific adult and a successful really adult. Yeah. But one of the things, it struck me, he told me something recently, and it struck me. He was a very hard child to parent when he was young. He had tantrums, and then when he learned that this is not okay to throw yourself on the floor like that, he continued to have tantrums just in different ways. He also was a leader, and here's his leader story, and people may be able to relate to this. I don't remember if I've told this on the podcast before. I don't even know if Alison knows it.
Yeah.
So when he was young, we were asked to leave many, many places because of things Scott would do. One of them was the library. The story time person at the library expelled us. And you gotta be doing some stuff to be tossed out of story time. So here's what happened. I watch him, and there was a glass wall so I could see what's happening. He went into the story time room. He's all of maybe 3 years old. He goes into the story time room and sits in the back. And it was September. It was still warm out, and he was wearing his little kid sandals, He sits in the back, and he takes a sandal off, and he nudges the kid next to him, who then takes the sandal off. And they're all looking around now, the kids, and everybody's taking their shoes off. And my son started it. So he didn't get thrown out at that point. At that point, the story time person came out to me and said, you need to talk to him. You need to talk to him about keeping his shoes on. So I said to him the next time we went, I said, you need to keep your shoes on. Be safe and keep your shoes on. You never know what's going to happen. Please don't take your shoes off. You need to listen to the teacher. So he goes in, and once again, he sits in the back, which should have been my first clue. He sits in the back. He did keep his shoes on, but instead of taking his shoes off, I see him put his hands around his knees and roll back and roll forward and roll back and roll forward. And he's like looking at the kids next to him who are now looking at him. And another one grabs their knees and rolls back and rolls forward. So now he has turned this entire story time thing into an exercise class. And, so that was the point at which the storytime person came out of the room and said to me, I think he's not mature enough for story time. And I was thinking, I think you shouldn't be working with this age group, because she didn't know what to do with it. But at any rate, we were chucked out of there. We were also tossed out of gymnastics.
So we turned story time into gymnastics, and then gymnastics.
And they got tossed out of gymnastics because he insisted on teaching the other children how to body slam each other on the trampoline, and we couldn't stop him. And so once again, we were asked to. So this was, fun. And these stories, I share publicly all the time, and Scott knows that I do. It's not like I'm, if he listens, he's going to be like, oh boy, there go those stories. And today, as an adult, he's rather proud. And here's the point of me telling you these stories. Thank you for sticking with me. Although I hope you're laughing at this.
Yeah.
I was not laughing at the time. Here's the point of the story. He's now an adult. He's a graphic designer. He works for a really great firm. He had his annual review. He called me after his annual review, and he was very excited because the CEO of his design firm told him that he has great leadership qualities. Ta-da!
See?
Ta-da!
See?
Right? Voila!
Yeah.
He has great leadership qualities, and he always has, and he drove us crazy.
I do feel like the ones that have leadership skills are the ones that'll drive you crazy because they can get an entire group to do what they're doing when they're doing it. And that can just derail some lessons or story time or gymnastics, so, but I feel like if you don't squander it, if you don't push it down,
don't waste it. Don't push it down. Don't waste it.
Then you'll have an adult like Scott who has great leadership skills, and it'll serve him very, very well in his career, in his social life, in a lot of different ways.
He was also, by the way, my son was also president of his fraternity. So there you have it.
Yeah.
If we don't squash this and force it out of children and instead treasure it.
Right.
And take a deep breath and just say, okay, this is a leadership quality. And we have to stop using negative words. We have to stop using words like bossy. That's like they are able to lead.
Yeah.
So embrace
leadership skills. Yeah. So,
So what are some of the things, Alison, can you think of some things that we can tell people, like, let leaders lead? So we gave the example in the classroom of being the inspector, taking over large groups sometimes if they would like, or another time of day where they can be the leaders.
Yeah, I
take turns.
Have like a time in the day that I allow them to kind of like, we'll play games and stuff, and I was like, you know what, you're in charge of the game. Like, I'm gonna sit back and but a time and a place where I let them do that. I don't let them do that all the time. Like, I'm like, okay, now's the time that you can lead the game. I let them lead the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, things like that we do at school. What else?
I'll tell you what can sometimes satisfy kids like that, even if you're playing a game with them and you let them go first. Such a simple thing.
Simple.
Where you just say, you go first, because then they're sort of leading that game because they went first.
Yeah.
Give them choices. We always talk about the importance of choices, but give them choices. Where would you like to go today? What would you like to do? I remember being out with my son and sometimes saying, if we were walking somewhere and there was a choice of which way to go, I sometimes would say, you decide, I'll follow you. And sometimes we have to follow them, follow their choices, follow their decisions, and teach them that being that sort of leader is actually a good thing.
It's good. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also shows like your choices are valid, so, and that's what we want to do for all kids. We don't want the leadership kids to get their decisions pushed down either, just because they might be labeled as something else.
So, as Scott's mom, I'm just going to say my heart goes out to you all. I have a lot of compassion for what you're likely going through. And they need to know, you may be a leader, but there still are boundaries. I'm not saying take the boundaries away. We always had boundaries in the classroom and at home, regardless. They have to learn to lead within the boundaries, just like we hope all leaders lead within the rules, regulations, and policies. When I ran a school, I was the school leader, but I had to do that within the policies and the state regulations. It's an important lesson for them to learn. You have to do it within these boundaries.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Because that'll serve them when they're older. Like, we all have boundaries at our work, in our roles.
Right.
So teach them that early. Like, you can lead, but within these parameters. Like, I'm not going to let you lead me across the street. The rules are you have to hold my hand when we go across the street. Right. You still need to be safe when you make your decisions. Yeah. You need to think things through a little bit. And just like we do as adults. Like, when I'm in my job, I lead the class, but within parameters that are given to me, and so it's not like just a free for all. The world is not a free for all, So
it is not, and they need to learn that. Yeah.
Yeah. They need to learn that.
Yeah. And there is a balance, folks. There is a balance you can strike between these are the boundaries. and okay, you can lead this. Pick things.
Yeah.
It can be such little things. We're always saying when children are very young, when they're like 2 years old and they just want to say no, you have to give them things they can say no to.
Saying
simple things that they can say no to kind of release that impulse to say no, and to see that, yeah, it has power, but there are times when you can say no and there are times when you can't. And it's the same for this. There are times when you can lead, and there are times where you just need to let me lead because I'm the adult here. Right. And there are times where it's better for me to lead, just like when they grow up and they go to work, and sometimes they're going to get to lead, and sometimes someone else is going to be the leader of that team.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I hope this helps those of you who are teaching and raising leaders, and I hope you got a good chuckle with us. We did promise a little laugh in this episode, I remember.
We did.
We've been
I think we've achieved
such heavy topics, but no, this was, it's both heavy and light. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you have it. We love, again, getting new listeners or viewers on YouTube. So please share this podcast, and Alison is going to tell you how to contact us and how to share it.
Yes.
Now that she's sitting in a place where there's so much light, that's why she moved, in case people are wondering. But go on.
That, and we got a dog issue, but well,
listen, we're human. Here's the thing, folks. We're people, and this is a labor of love, and we're doing our best. And that's how we feel
our
about
best. And sometimes Rusty just wants to say hi.
And also there's a pandemic, and we sort of are, here we are.
My box.
Where I live, in this Zoom box.
Where I live. All right. We're human. And if you want to contact these two humans, you can find us on our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com. There's a contact form on there that you can write to us. You can also find us on Facebook, How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast. You can message us there. We usually get back pretty quickly if we're not too busy.
Mm-hmm.
Rate us 5 stars on whatever.
That'd be nice.
Podcast device. Is that what
we're trying?
Platform. I don't know what that's called because I'm not techie, but wherever you're listening to us, rate us 5 stars.
And we're going to wish you hope and a good week, and we'll catch you next week on the podcast. Take care, preschool peeps.